Yes, hello, welcome back. And today, since I have already ranked the Doctors, I decided that we should rank each Doctor Who series since the New Who revival in 2005. So we're going to be ranking Series 1, we're going to be ranking the specials that David Tennant did, and we're going to go all the way up to Series 13. Of course, if you're watching and you haven't subscribed yet, of course, I implore you to please just think about it, and maybe I could get some money, but I might give some back to you if you're lucky. That's a lie, I'm sorry, that's a lie. Right, let's start the list off with what I think is the worst series of Doctor Who since it came back, which is Series 11. Now, Series 11 was Jodie Whittaker's first ever series as the Doctor, and I have to say, I don't think there could have been a worse start. This was the first series in the Doctor Who modern era that wasn't an over-arc in sort of it. So we had Bad Wolf in Series 1, we had like bees disappearing on planets and all that in Series 4, we had the Pandorica in Series 5, etc. But in Series 11, nothing. It was just a mishmash of random stories you can watch at any order, which I guess was the point, and it would be a lot more effective if the stories were actually good. The only mention of a important thing is, I think it's in the Ghost Monument where they mention the Timeless Child, and just there's no point to the Timeless Child. I think I've already said it in my last video. It's pointless. It makes people think that you have to be special to do something you don't. It's just a piece of poo, and it doesn't need happening. I think my favourite episode from this series would have to be The Witchfinders, and my least favourite, that would either have to go to the conundrum, I don't know how the hell you pronounce it, or the Battle of, was it Raval Kalos or something? I don't know. Them two, they have confusing titles and I don't know how to say them. Awful. Next on the list I put Series 13. In this special, I'm also going to be counting either the Daleks, Legend of the Sea Devils, and the Power of the Doctor as one as well, just to clear everything up. Now, I thought this series was just a bit boring. We got introduced to some characters that we didn't need, like Vinda and Belle. I get that the story could be loving and appealing, but there wasn't really any point. Dan, he's just Graham 2.0 really. He's just a Scout's Graham, and there's no need for him. We got reintroduced to Kate, who was she was a nice, fresh, remembering face. But again, not too much to do. It was like a snake man that was tied her together with a flux, and that was all really. One of the best things to me about this series was the Sontaran redesign, where their face and their whole head looked a lot more crispy, should I say, than all the other modern ones. It was a little callback to the classic design, like the original design from the Time Warrior, and the suit as well. The armour suit was nice in grey and black, which is, I think, a lot better than blue. Of course, then they had to go and ruin the Sontarans by deciding that they had a chocolate addiction. Whoa. I think my favourite episode from this series would either have to be Village of the Angels or The War on the Sontarans. I don't know which one. It could be either. I do think that they are some of Jodie's best in her whole tenure, to be honest. But my least favourite would probably be either The Vanquishers or Once Upon a Time. They're not memorable. They don't stick in my head. I can't remember a thing. But if we're including the specials, Power of the Doctor is probably up there as my favourite, and Legend of the Sea Devil is just boring. Nothing happens. Nothing. It's just boring, and Dan could have easily been left at Earth on that episode at the end instead of being in 5 minutes of Power of the Doctor. Legend of the Sea Devil was just so dull compared to everything else. Like all the other specials, they at least had some action, and they kept you interested for 5 minutes. Legend of the Sea Devil couldn't even do that, and they absolutely wasted one of the best villains in Doctor Who ever. In 12th place, I put Series 8. I do think there is quite a big difference between Series 13 and Series 8 as opposed to quality. I do think this is a big jump, and I did expect myself to put Series 8 higher, but just looking at all the other series, I just couldn't put this one above any of the others, really. It starts off with Deep Breath, which is also Peter Capaldi's first episode, an hour and 15, almost as long as Day of the Doctor, and I really do like that. I think it's one of his most underrated. I think the idea with the dinosaur was a little bit silly. I think it was just for a bit of comedy. But the actual main villain was a callback, I believe, to the Clockwork ones in Girl of the Fireplace in Series 2. Yeah, I did like the villain. It was very good. And at the end, you have questions whether the Doctor pushed him out the window or did he just fall. And it does make you think about the new Doctor. My favourite from the series would probably have to be Mummy on the Orient Express, although I did really like the two-part finale as well. But Mummy on the Orient Express was just a nice little episode they didn't even watch the whole series for. And it's very creepy, and it brings back some one-liners from other Doctor Who episodes. It's very good, and it's always been my favourite from Series 8. My least favourite from Series 8, however, would probably have to be In the Forest of the Night. It's so unbelievably dull. It's about a school trip with Danny. Danny and Clara is another thing. their relationship just isn't convincing at all. And I don't believe that Clara would threaten to burn all the TARDIS keys that the Doctor has, which he's given her, by the way, for free, in a pool of lava, because he won't go and save her boyfriend. Of what, like 6 months? No, it's not believable. We're back to Jodie now with Series 12. Now, I do think overall Series 12 is easily Jodie's best series, but it is still bad. Series 12 bring back loads of old Doctor Who villains. They bring back to June, they bring back the Master, they bring back the Cybermen. So in theory, it's set up to be an amazing series, but Chibnall's writing, so that just dunks it down at least 10 levels. Now, the season opener, as far as things go, I really, really do enjoy. I think it's one of the best episodes in all of Whittaker's era, the two of them. And the reveal with the Master is really good. It is a little bit underwhelming when you compare it to others like Michelle Gomez, but it is so, so good still. No one saw it coming. But when you get good Whittaker stories, you also get absolutely awful Whittaker stories, like Orphan 55. I can just tell how many of you just shudders at the thought of Orphan 55. I'm not even going to say any more. You just have to know it's Orphan 55. That's it, and you're just disgusted. Also, the Timeless Children. It's in a similar situation for me with Heaven Sent and Hellbent, in the fact that Heaven Sent is probably one of my favourites of Series 9, which we'll get to in a minute, and Hellbent is probably my least favourite, because Hellbent just ruins what was in Heaven Sent. And that for me is very much like the finale of this series with Ascension of the Cybermen and the Timeless Children. Ascension of the Cybermen is my favourite episode of the series, but it's not my favourite story because it's connected with the Timeless Child, which is nonsense, absolute nonsense. So yeah, Ascension of the Cybermen, easily my favourite episode. Timeless Children, easily my worst. If I can't have that, Spyfall is my favourite, and Orphan 55 is my least favourite. They are. In 10th place for me is gonna have to be Series 9. This series is famous, I think, for being one of the series with so many two-parters. I think there's 4 or 5 in total. I know there's the Dalek one, the Lake one, the Zygon one, and I'm sure there's another one that I can't remember. One of the reasons why I put Series 9 down here was because of the stories, though. The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar, I think, is quite good for the most part, except for Missy, who we didn't really need. I mean, it was an exceptional performance by Michelle Gomez, but we didn't need her character here. And Davros opened his eyes, which were burnt shut. How do you explain that? How do you explain that to a lifelong Davros fan who's looked up about him, who knows his eyes were burnt shut, just to have his little hologramic blue eye flicker and then just open his eyes like he was hibernating or something? Another problem I have with this series is Clara. I feel like at this point she has outstayed her welcome. She should have gone at the end of Series 8, if not the Christmas special. They literally lined up 2 amazing exits that Clara could have gone, and Gemma Coleman decided to stay for both of them. So that just ended up with the Christmas special and the finale, the ending of the finale, being completely pointless. But for me, overall, my least favourite thing in this whole series is Hellbent. It brings Gallifrey back for no reasons. Apparently the Doctor and Clara are the hybrids, and we thought it could be like a Dalek Time Lord thing, or a Dalek human, or a Time Lord human. There were so many options, but Moffat decided to go with Clara and the Doctor making the hybrid. And it was never even fully explained what the hybrid was. It was just, right, I'm the hybrid and you don't know what it is, but too bad, you should just understand. Hellbent, I think, was really such a letdown from Heaven Sent. It was such a step down as well. Heaven Sent was this really creepy claustrophobic episode with only the Doctor and this haunting demon-like thing chasing him very ever so slowly around the castle, and every time the demon would touch the Doctor, he would die and he'd get sent back to where it started. And I thought that was so clever, and the cliffhanger where he was on Gallifrey at the end was really exciting and it excited me, but Hellbent just played it off awfully. And Clara's now out there with a shielder, or me, flying through space and time, frozen in time apparently because her heart's not beating, where she should just be dead. Favourite episodes or stories from this series for me would be Under the Lake and Before the Flood, and my least favourite has to be Hellbent. It's nothing worse. In the 9th place spot, I've put Series 7, A and B. I'm going to first talk about Series 7A, which was, in my opinion, quite weak watching it back. I think the only ones that I really liked were, I think The Angel Take Manhattan was the best one by a long shot, if you don't count The Snowman, in which case that's my favourite. I thought Assignment of the Daleks was alright. It did have some pointless elements to it, but overall it was alright. Except for, Amy and Rory being divorced now, which is so pointless. And then the other ones, are so forgettable. There's not really any point to them. Series 7B I do think was a lot better than Series 7A. If you do count the Snowmen in Series 7B, I think that is a really, really good one. I think it was one of the best Christmas specials ever. I don't know why I feel like that, because I know in my head it's not as good as I think it is, but I always have had a soft little spot for it, and I have no idea why. Bells of St. John I think is pretty good. I think it's quite underrated. The Rings of Akhaten, it's alright. I do think the song is probably one of my favourite songs in all of Doctor Who, so I think I can let that slide a little bit. Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS I think is one of the better ones as well. I don't know why, I know that's quite unpopular, but it is one of the first ones from Series 7B that I ever saw. Also, The Name of the Doctor I recently rewatched as well, and I found myself liking that quite good as well. And obviously Day of the Doctor is spectacular, and Time of the Doctor is quite good too. If I count this all as one series, I would say my favourite episode is probably Day of the Doctor, and my least favourite either Power of Three or Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. Very weak episodes. Next I put Series 6. Series 6 for me is a very mediocre series. It is very middle of the road. That's why it is pretty much middle of the list. For me, this series is just about 50-50-ish. I really do love the opener of the series. I think it's called The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. I think it's really clever what they did. I love it being set back in time in some parts, and the whole thing seems a lot more grand than what we had ever seen before in Doctor Who. I also really enjoyed the Rebel Flesh and the Almost People, and the twist at the end, well, I would say spoilers, but it's been out for, 11 years? Yeah, the twist at the end that Amy wasn't actually in the TARDIS that whole time from the start of Series 6, and she was just this piece of flesh. And even Amy herself, she thought she was in the TARDIS, but she was just in like an outer space nursing home where she was about to give birth to a baby, who would, of course, turn out to be River Song. But with great episodes like them, you also get episodes like The Curse of the Black Spot, Closing Time, and The Wedding of River Song, which are really disappointing, especially The Wedding of River Song. It was lent up to this big grand finale, which I suppose it was, but it was too grand, and you just couldn't keep up, and it didn't know what it wanted to be, and it really did let itself down. Another positive I will say about this series, though, is that Rory's character development is really, really good. You can definitely see him coming out of his shell more in this series. And Series 5 definitely did come out of his shell, but I don't think as much in this series. He is definitely growing as a character a lot more in Series 6 than in any other series, in my opinion. Oh yeah, there was literally an episode called Let's Kill Hitler in this series. Don't know how I feel about that, but that's happened. My favourite from the series would have to be the series opener, The Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon. And my least favourite, probably Closing Time. They did really waste the Cybermen in the story with putting them under a supermarket and defeating them with love and everything like that. But Will doesn't like that. You can't defeat cyborg human robots with a bit of love and crying out your baby's name. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately.